If you win, tell me how the reimbursement process would work. Would it be a complete mess? I mean, you're saying before the government promised reimbursement, and now you're saying, oh, well, that's rich. But how would this work? It seems to me like it could be a mess.
Supreme Court is now weighing whether President Trump has the authority to impose tariffs on countries around the world. Justice Amy Coney Barrett cautioned during oral arguments Wednesday that if the court rules against the president, the logistics of paying back disputed tariffs would be a mess. For more, let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. As Justice Barrett indicated, if the ruling goes against the administration, paying back these tariffs could really be sticky. I mean, spell out the universe of possibilities of what this could look like, because are we talking about just the IEEPA tariffs, or is there a world in which all of the tariffs that he has imposed could be affected by this potential ruling?
Great to see you, Jackie. And that's a tough question, and Justice Barrett was just raising it at the end of the oral arguments because they looked like they were starting to turn south for the Trump administration. What happens if the court strikes down the tariffs? One thing that people should be clear on is that this main challenge to the tariffs is for what we call the worldwide tariffs, the idea that every country in the world pays somewhere from 10 to 40%. That's going to leave intact tariffs that are against specific countries for specific national security reasons. So, for example, there are tariffs against China and Mexico and Canada trying to stop the importation of fentanyl that's doing so much harm in our communities. Those should be relatively intact. However, these tariffs have been raising about maybe around $150 billion so far this year, maybe more, but when all is said and done, for the worldwide tariffs, there's going to have to be a massive refund program, the likes we have never seen in American history. The Customs and Border Patrol, which is part of DHS, does refunds if they make a mistake in charging you a tariff. But they've never had to do something where they've refunded all the tariffs over a whole year in the amounts that we're talking about. That could be chaotic. That's what Justice Barrett is referring to as a mess. The last thing I would stress is that President Trump is always free to come back now and use other trade laws, which are not as sweeping as the IEEPA statute, to try to replace the tariffs that the court may strike down towards the end of this year.
The president seemed to indicate, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but he seemed to indicate in his post this morning that he's concerned that potentially all of his tariff authority could be affected by this ruling, because he writes, so let's get this straight. The president of the United States is allowed and fully approved by Congress to stop all trade with a foreign country, which is far more onerous than a tariff, and license a foreign country, but is not allowed to put a simple tariff on a foreign country, even for the purposes of national security. That is not what our founders had in mind. That reference to national security, does that indicate that he's fearful that these other tariff authorities might go away as well, or could go away if the justices rule against him?
I think that's right, Jackie, but I also think the president has more authorities available to him and that he should start developing a plan B. What President Trump is worried about is the idea that you could declare a national security emergency over a trade deficit, which then triggers those worldwide tariffs. But which this case does not attack is the idea that you could use these other trade laws and say China specifically is a national security threat, not the trade deficit, just China, because of all the rivalry, all the things they're doing, like cyber attacks, like dumping things in our markets, and so on, creating the fentanyl precursors. Then you can still use these laws to target that country. It's not as sweeping as comprehensive as the 10% on the entire world tariff, but you can still go country by country. It's just going to take longer. It's going to take more work and investigation.
Okay.
But I think he could get a lot done by the end of the year should the court strike down the tariffs.
Well, the president talks about it as a life and death case for the country, and you do see him forcing trade deals and peace deals and even private company deals with these tariffs. So very important case to watch. John Yoo, thank you very much for talking about it with us on the Sunday Briefing. Appreciate your time.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.